That'll be Joan Burton.
Thank you, Corla. I firstly want to thank the Chair of the Education Committee and the committee members for producing this very valuable report, and just to make a number of comments on it. When I said to somebody today that the report was coming before the Dáil, they immediately said to me, well, I'm on 2 boards of management, and can I ask you to ask that the boards of management and the management and indeed patrons of the school would be specifically included in the training opportunities that are available, because essentially there are a number of difficult points. One is when a parent is applying for a place in a primary school at very junior level. Parents are just told by the CNOs to go and ask every primary school in the area, and if the parent can get a place, great. Very often they can't. So I do think that approach and information and support to parents about access to an educational place and how they might go about it. The boards of management, like the parent that I was talking to today, who's on several boards of management, they don't really necessarily understand the criteria. They definitely need training. And they also need training because, as I think the chairperson would be aware, if the child, for instance, has severe behavioural issues, I'm concerned that very many of those behavioural issues are going to board level for action by the board, because the behavioural issues may be very severe. It may involve actual or perceived threats to the staff in the school, or indeed to other children in the school where there's severe behavioural issues. That can sometimes result, and there's an epidemic of this in the UK, and we do not want to go their route, of the child effectively being excluded from school. And I think we need to think about that, because this is a difficult issue for everybody. Clearly, the same issues arise all over again at secondary school level. If the child by secondary school level, particularly say if they were on the autism spectrum, has not progressed in a way that might have been expected, or maybe still is suffering from severe behavioural issues. Now, I don't think there are easy answers to this, but I do think there are issues that are very practical and that need to be concerned. The second thing I want to say as well is that I know a number of children at the moment transiting from primary, and they're in their first year in secondary, and because they are on the autism spectrum but also have behavioural issues, their behavioural issues are very, very difficult. In my own constituency, and I say this to the Minister for Education, for instance, in Castleknock, in the Taoiseach's home area, since 2 months before Christmas, there has been no prescribing consultant psychiatrist in the CAM service. Now, Minister, you may be very well aware of what this means, but what it does mean is that a child, for instance, with ADHD, panic attacks, or other very severe behavioural, what amount to behavioural issues, they cannot be prescribed the medicine that may be essential to them in terms of helping them to manage their behaviour in the context of attending the school. Now, I had a topical issue earlier in the week to which the Minister for Health replied, and to be honest, what was indicated there was that perhaps other staff will be allowed to prescribe medication. I actually agree that prescribing, medication in these circumstances to children is really important, that quite senior staff are involved in the decision making, because it can have very important effects both on the child's life and on the family's life. And obviously, that's something in which we're just developing knowledge. Not every school has this knowledge. But I do want to commend all of the people who work with special needs schools, in schools, and all of the efforts that they genuinely make to integrate the children. There was reference being made to the ASD classes. I know my predecessor, Jan O'Sullivan, when she was Minister for Education, dropped the term unit because what was happening was children are sometimes being asked, like, when are you getting out of that unit? Almost like they were sort of in a place of somewhat, somewhat special. So the language was changed. In relation to the recommendation in 6 about standardising nursing and clinical supports, I think that's a really solid, good recommendation. It's also a very ambitious recommendation because, again, having worked over a long period of time myself with the Daughters of Charity in the Navan Road, Castleknock and a lot of the North Side area, there were very big changes in the model on the HSE side. The schools then were left, as it were, to pick up the nursing support side, and I don't think myself that has ever actually been fully addressed yet, except where you have a full special needs school. So I think that does need to be looked at, because if you are going to take and mainstream, and this is what parents want, they want their small child who has special needs to be, as far as possible, mainstreamed with other children into our educational system. And I think that's understandable and it's good, but it requires support, and I certainly think it needs appropriate nursing and clinical support so that there's, if you like, support between if you like, the medical and social services side with the school side, regardless of whether we're talking about a DEIS school or whether we're talking about a non-DEIS school. But very often, of course, certainly in the Greater Dublin area, the only school that parents can often get their children into are DEIS schools, because they may have more vacancies in practice. But I'm sure, Minister, your officials will be able to tell you about that. But that shouldn't mean, and this is another issue that parents raise with me all the time, that the child, say in the Dublin region, or indeed any other part of the country, has to go on very long bus journeys every day. If they are on the ASD spectrum, if, for instance, they have particular sensitivities around, for instance, lights, movement, noise, traffic, and I mean, some children may well like that and enjoy it, but if they have to be on a bus for an hour and a half, twice a day, I think that is very demanding of the children, and I'm sure it's something that the educational experts have factored in. Now, if the child is then in a special school, that's very welcome usually to the parents, but it is a very, very long journey. I also want to say that when I was Minister for Social Protection, I carried out a review with the Chief Medical Officer of the Department of Social Protection in relation to the domiciliary care allowance. And the domiciliary care allowance was changed at the time to specifically include the behavioural disorders, which a lot of us, I think, have only learnt of in relatively recent years. I am not sure that they're fully accounted for and recognised by the Department of Education. I think autism is now, but maybe 20 years ago, I don't think the Department of Education recognised autism spectrum disorders. So I do think that behavioural issues probably need some expert attention, because certainly in the UK, I'm aware that there are a lot of children being excluded from school, and subsequently, really, a lot of the analysis would suggest that some of the children have issues with behavioural issues that perhaps could be helped if they got expert help. But it is a very difficult situation for a school in the context of the staff and other pupils when they have to deal with that. It's not, I know it's not always easy. And nobody wants to see children being, for instance, expelled from school. And nobody wants to see children being excluded, or the parent told the child can only be in school for an hour, and the parent really has to be on the premises ready to intervene should that be required, or be there available if the child cannot be taken home. But I'm sure that the staff in the department have probably discussed this at great length. I do think the idea about, if you like, a nursing presence, which was always available in the specialist primary schools attached to the traditional institutions which provided care for children with intellectual and other disabilities, I do think actually having qualified nurses available with their particular background and skills, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do appreciate that it would probably be expensive, but I think it's something, you know, that does need to be examined and considered. Certainly, going back to the experience in social protection on the domiciliary care allowance examination, consulting with various people with a lot of experience in the field in a range of different countries, it was possible to make vast improvements in terms of who qualified, take some of the pressure off the families and give them an acknowledged support. And I think that there is the same thing in the, if you like, in the school area, that we're at the beginning of further and better developments. SNAs, again, I know many SNAs, they give enormous support to children, and they're very important in the life of the school for the other children and for the school staff. I do think there should be a focus on providing much more training, capacity and opportunities to SNAs, because again, many of us who know the care they give to children, indeed the school secretaries and the care they give to children, including particularly children with special needs, if they can be included in the positive developments, I think that that would pay a lot of dividend in terms of our developing our understanding of how as a society we best respond to special needs, and I think that in fact would be to everybody's benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.